Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen. It's an engaging and enlightening talk show on life, relationships, and the business of life. Grab a cup of juice and just chill. Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen. Live life. Live fully.
You are now tuned in to this week's episode of our podcast. Today we are going to interview some of the greatest and most influential minds in our field. By sharing our collective expertise, we will show you how to harness, control, and use your own skill set to achieve ultimate success and live the life you want. And now, please welcome your host.
Omobola Stephen. I'm the host, Omobola Stephen on the show. We focus on disruptive Mindshift conversations, and now that's very important because in order for us to begin to make the right and informed decisions, we need to begin to have a transformed mindset, which is the main focus of Life Well Lived by Omobola Stephen. Today I have Cory Rosenke, who is a theologian, an author, a presenter, and also a coach. Welcome with me on today's show, Cory Rosenke.
Thank you so much, Omobola. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I very much appreciate it.
I very much appreciate your presence also, and I'm looking forward to a great time. And in your words, Cory, there are, and I quote, there are a lot of people talking about healthy body and minds, but I'm on a mission to remind people about the needs of their souls. Now, the very core of who we truly have. Now, what do you think are the things or some of the things that we're missing out?
Well, I think that we live in a culture that is, to a certain degree, I think we would have to admit, is in a bit of chaos. I mean, when we look around the world as today, we are amazed to see that we live in a time that is unprecedented in the history of the world. We live in a time of unprecedented prosperity, where more people than ever have access to education, to wealth, to opportunity, to comfort, and to leisure. And yet virtually every study shows that we are more unhappy than we have ever been. And I think we have to ask the question of why. And I would suggest to you that a large part of the reason for this is that we have forgotten who we are. As humans, we have forgotten what we are to a certain degree. And it's interesting because there's all this talk in the world today about AI and how AI is advancing, and everyone's concerned about what happens if AI becomes self-aware. What kind of dangers could that present? But I would pose that the bigger danger is the fact that we actual humans have become, we've lost our self-awareness. We no longer understand who we are in our fullness. We view ourselves as brains and bodies, essentially. And our entire culture is based around titillating and entertaining and the brain and the body. And yet we are, I believe that both through faith and through science and through mathematics and through history, that we are beings that exist beyond biology. And as long as we are simply trying to cater to the biological component of ourselves, we struggle to identify who we are, which means we struggle to find peace, which means we struggle to identify meaning. And consider that in a world where we can do heart transplants like that, we can heal diseases like never before, we can send rockets into space, we can walk on the moon, and yet we still struggle to understand what it is that will bring us peace and what it is that will deliver us a meaningful sense of identity.
You talk about losing our self-awareness. How then can we find self-awareness in this dynamic world? I know how important self-awareness is in terms of how we can really build our self-worth. So how then can we begin to find it at this critical moment of our lives?
Right. Well, I think it's going to come through an awakening. I think that we have to acknowledge the truth about the fact that we have become solely focused on the brain and the body. Imagine a house where all we ever worried about was the walls and the floor. And we had carpenters come in and we maintained the walls and we maintained the floor. Meanwhile, we have a roof over our heads that is leaking water. It's letting snow in. We are similar. We've been so focused on the brain and the body that we have forgotten the core part of us, the soul. And oftentimes I talk to people and they ask me, they say, okay, what proof do you have that we have a soul? So I think that's an important question to ask to start with. The vast majority of people today statistically believe in a soul. They believe that we do exist beyond biology. And yet academia today has all but forgotten the soul. They are completely focused on the brain and the body. And I think it's a time for us to awaken to the fact officially that we exist beyond biology. And there is much evidence to this fact. Whenever people ask me, what evidence do you have that I have a soul? I generally say, you are your own best evidence that you have a soul. And your own best evidence comes through the fact that you have biological cravings, yes. And the biological cravings that we see in all the creatures around us, we need food, we need water, we need to procreate, we need shelter. We have this hope to live another day so that we can once again get food and water and shelter, and the cycle continues. But we as humanity don't just have biological cravings, we crave justice. A completely non-biological craving. As I mentioned earlier, we have a craving for identity, to answer the question, who am I? What am I? Do I have purpose? Do I have meaning? No other creature on earth asks these questions. It is us. And those questions are non-biological. They come from the soul. And so first off, I believe that we need to experience this awakening where we are willing to take the blinders off somehow and look at ourselves in a more holistic sense. Acknowledging, another evidence we have of the soul is what I call uncoerced conclusion. When you look at the history of the world, we can talk about the soul, I should say, completely devoid before we even get into religion at all, because the soul predates that religion. Every culture in the history of the world, essentially, whether they were from the jungle or from the plains or from the mountains, whether they built their houses out of wood or rock or blocks of snow or buffalo hides, whether they were hunter-gatherers or fishermen or farmers, they all came to the same conclusion that we have a soul, that some part of us exists beyond biology. And it's very important to note that the awareness of the soul was not evangelized. It did not go spread around the world like religion did. When the English landed on North American shores, the American Indians that were already here believed in a soul. The English didn't bring a knowledge of the soul. The Native Americans had their own awareness of the soul. And same thing, we could look back in ancient history with Rome. When Rome landed their legions north of the White Cliffs of Dover, they believed in a soul, but the people they were invading, in this case, the Celts, also believed in a soul. Long before there was ever any outside influence in Africa, the Africans believed in a soul. All of human society, all of human culture came to the same conclusion independently. That is a mathematical, historic, I would say scientific fact that cannot be denied. If my son comes running into the room and says, "Dad, did you hear that big bang?" And I say, "No, I didn't hear it," I might think that he was hearing things, that it didn't actually happen. But if my wife comes in from the garden and says, "Honey, did you hear that big bang?" I'm like, "Oh, 2 testimonies that there was a big bang. Maybe there was something there." And then my neighbor comes in and knocks on the door. "Hey, did you guys hear that big bang?" I know, okay, there was a big bang. I didn't hear it, but clearly there was, because there are 3 independent testimonies claiming this. We'll multiply that by thousands and over thousands of years, and you see that there is irrefutable mathematical and historic evidence that we exist beyond biology, because all these cultures independently came to the same conclusion. And so the first step, I believe, is awakening to this realization. For some reason, in our modern culture, we put it on the back burner, and we're so focused on brains and bodies, right? And we identify ourselves that way. But I often tell people, the reflection looking back at you in the mirror is not who you are, right? The diploma on your wall is not what defines you. Our skin color doesn't define us, right? Our marital status doesn't define us. We are best defined by our souls. And in that core part of us, we are all united.
Now, you emphasize so the question now then is, how can we begin to live out the life that our soul intended? How possible it is? I know that's really a very profound question, but can you share your insight?
Absolutely. Well, first, I would say this. I would give you a quick a cheat sheet, a master class in psychology that you can learn right now. You do not have to be Sigmund Freud. You don't need to be Adrian Monk. You don't need to be some psychologist or psychiatrist to understand yourself and understand the people around you. Through my research through years and years and years, I would say that our soul has 5 cravings. And when we recognize these 5 cravings, it absolutely revolutionizes the way we live. And I also believe that these 5 cravings are the prerequisite for fulfillment and peace. And the problem is, as I mentioned, because we haven't even been acknowledging the soul, let alone the soul's cravings, we've been looking for peace in all the wrong places. And I believe that is the reason for the frustration we see in the world today, because we thought we were going to find it in money. We thought we were going to find it in a big, degree, a PhD. We thought we were going to find it in relationships with people around us. And yet all those things continue to fall apart. All of those things are fallible. And so I tell people this: you can identify your own need, and you can identify the need of the people around you through understanding 5 simple cravings. And the cravings are this: security, identity, independence, significance, and innocence. All of humanity has been propelled, I believe, through life and time by these 5 cravings. And 4 of them are well documented in psychology. For the last 200 years, you can find books, you can find countless academic papers written on the human need for security, identity, independence, and significance. It's everywhere. I believe I categorize these as cravings of the soul because they have non-biological purpose and function. And they go beyond biology. It's not just psychology. There is something deeper at play. So security, identity, independence, significance, and innocence. Those are the prerequisites for peace. Those are the prerequisites for fulfilled living. And when you look at the world around you and you wonder why some people seem contented to live in a small town, others want to live in a big city. You see people protesting in the streets, or you see people not protesting in the streets, and you say, what is it that motivates each of these people to do what they're doing? What's motivating them is the different way that they have perceived and pursued security, identity, independence, significance, and innocence. Those are the 5 questions of the soul. Those are the 5 cravings of the soul that must be answered. And if we can live lives in which those 5 cravings are satisfied simultaneously, that is the secret to peace. And it has to be simultaneous. That's the thing. I can feel secure. I can feel safe in my home and in my relationships. I can know who I am. But if someone is making me feel guilty, I'm not at peace, because they've triggered that innocence craving, right? Or I can feel completely innocent of any crime, right? And I can feel special, and I can feel like I am significant in the eyes of others. But if I don't feel safe, I'm not at peace. All 5 of those cravings have to be answered simultaneously. So for any listener who is looking for, how can I live a fulfilled life? How can I live a life of joy and purpose and peace? Those are the 5 words you need to memorize: security, identity, independence, significance, and innocence.
Right, Cory, talking about purpose, some of us have found our purpose accidentally, and some of us found it, intentionally. And now, for the purpose of my audience, many people, most people are stuck in a rut in searching for what their true life purpose is. How can they find meaning and true definition of what their purpose is?
Right.
You have a profound insight to share on this topic to my audience. Can we talk?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you were talking about a biological craving like food and water, so if you look at, as an example, certain scientists, and this is just a certain segment, would say that the purpose of humanity is to exist. And we exist through consuming food and water and building shelters that keep us safe. There is a certain group of that's what they would say the core purpose is. But I don't believe so, because I believe, like I said, we exist beyond biology. We are not simply defined by a biology. So if we're going to look for our core purpose, we're going to have to look at our non-biological cravings, that part of us that exists separate from our bodies and our brains. And again, our core purpose, if the purpose of the body is to consume food and to maintain itself and maintain its health, the purpose of our core self is to discover and to maintain, and I would say to expand and give to others the satisfaction of those cravings of the soul. So our purpose should be to find security for ourselves and to build security for others. I believe we find purpose not just in understanding our own identity, but by helping people and assisting them in finding their identity. The same thing with independence. We find purpose and meaning not by simply demanding our own freedom, but by extending freedom to others. We find peace by not just climbing the ladder and saying, I am significant, I am special, but by elevating the people around us and saying, no, you are significant, you are special. And then we come to that final one, the innocence one. And this is a big one. Innocence is second to none. Innocence is the root cause of almost every argument we have ever had, where someone has, we perceive that someone has accused us of wrongdoing or wrong thinking, and we want to fight. Why? Because they have violated our deep soul craving for innocence. And so our purpose, again, is not simply to feel innocent ourselves, right? But to bestow a sense of well-being and innocence to the people around us. And I would suggest to people that that is your purpose. Now, in my book, I'm a person of faith, so I talk about different faith aspects of this. But this is also, I believe, the core root, even apart from faith. This is the best way to discover a life of purpose and fulfillment and meaning, is to understand our own cravings and not just to seek to satisfy them selfishly, but also to look at the world around us and seek to help them discover these things as well.
Cory, before we get to your book, how can I discover my purpose?
Right.
Now, this is a tough question. Now, we talk about purpose, and now you've defined it well. But really, how can I get to know this is my true purpose? How can I find it?
Right. Well, I think in order to understand purpose, we have to understand what we are and who we are. Right? If I don't understand who I am or what I am, I can't find purpose, right? When I look at a hammer and I know what it is, I understand its purpose, right? And the part of the problem with humanity today is that we've no longer acknowledged who we are. And so we've lost any sense of purpose. We have viewed ourselves. In fact, I would say this, I would caution people towards this. We live in a culture today, whether it's been intended or whether it was unintentional, where we have basically been told, you are nothing but an animal. And they say, okay, let's say you're a smart animal, but you're an animal nonetheless. And when we identify ourselves as animals, we give ourselves the same purpose as animals, right? Which is to consume, to survive, to guard our territory, to expand our territory. But when we realize that we aren't just brains and bodies, that we actually have souls, and that changes the equation as to who we are. And so I would say this, when you're looking for purpose, so Omobola, of course, or any of the listeners out there, I can't tell you what your purpose is in this particular moment. Purpose is something that you are going to have a journey to discover. But I can tell you where you're going to find it. You're going to find it in security, identity, independence, significance, innocence. It's not my place, obviously, to tell someone their purpose, but I can tell them where they're going to find it. And if you will look in those places, you will find your purpose.
Thank you, Cory Rosenke, for your insight. My question is, do you think that a life's purpose can change with the passage of time?
Our purpose can change with the passage of time. I think so. I think that life is a journey, and that there are twists and there are turns. And I think to not imagine that our purpose can change is really to rob ourselves of a journey. And I absolutely think that there are times in life. I mean, I would use just a physical example. When my wife and I first had kids, a very high part in my purpose was to provide a safe and stable home for my family. And that was a very real purpose. And I had to view that not simply as kind of some dirty chore that I had to do. It was actually my deepest purpose. I am here right now to support this new life and to build them up into a place where they will go forward and impact the world. As my kids grew up and moved from home, my purpose changed because my circle moved. And all of a sudden I felt like my purpose was to be a light in my particular community. And I can say this, I moved from Canada to the United States. Again, my goal was the same, but my purpose was moved to a whole nother place and a whole nother group of people in which I would be an influence in their lives. And so I think that we always need to remain open to the realization that our purpose can change. Because again, I would say that it is not our purpose that defines us. What defines us, I believe, what best defines us is the 5 cravings of our soul. And that can look like many different things. You can pursue that in the higher echelon of business at the top of a skyscraper. And meanwhile, there are homeless people living in tents in the street who are nonetheless looking for this. They have the same cravings and they're looking to satisfy them. They're satisfying them in different places and in different ways, but it is the same 5 cravings that are driving them forward. So yes, I believe that our purpose can change. Not only can it change, I think that at certain times it is appropriate that it changes.
Absolutely. Cory, can you tell me a bit about your book?
Yeah. So in my particular book, I identify, my goal is to reintroduce people to themselves. As I say in my goal, my book is to remove the mask, remove the ambiguity. You see, when we talk about, first off, we generally don't talk about the soul. And I think we need to start talking about the soul. But when we do talk about the soul, we talk about it in ambiguous terms. We use the word, but we don't define it. And that is not helpful. And so really what I've done in my book is I have tried to define the soul so that we can actually finally understand who we are and what we're looking for. Because when we don't understand who we are and what we're looking for, it makes it really hard to find anything of any substance. And so of course, the book is called The Magnetic Heart of God, Understanding the 5 Cravings of Your Soul. And I've shared this book with so many people from multiple faiths, from atheism, Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam's. I remember actually one of the most important feedbacks I ever got was from an atheist friend of mine who said, I don't always agree with the conclusions that you've come to regarding how to satisfy my craving. But he said, boy, in awakening to the fact that I exist beyond biology, it has changed everything for me. And so, yeah, I personally have called the book The Magnetic Heart of God, Understanding the 5 Cravings of Your Soul, because I believe that these cravings are specifically designed to be satisfied in our maker, that we struggle to actually have them fully fulfilled simply in earthly things, that there must be a spiritual component to our lives. Yeah, that was the purpose of writing my book, was to remove the mask and to talk about humanity at a deeper level than the conversation has led thus far in the world today, in academia today.
Can you share your projects in the pipeline that you have for my audience, if any, or any exciting news that's in the pipeline?
Well, for me, I'm just like my whole, we talk about purpose right now. I mean, my purpose right now has been communicating to people, to coming on fighting podcasts such as yours, and reminding people of their soul, reminding people of the needs of their soul, reminding the people of the absolute existential necessity that we once again view ourselves holistically, and understand that we exist beyond bio. As long as we are busy looking for fulfillment simply in non-biological and biological things, we will continue to live a life where we are not fulfilled. And I think this is evidenced around us so much. See, we were promised that throughout generations, that if we would just get to the top of that intellectual mountain, we would find peace. If we would just get to the top of that sexual mountain, we would find peace. If we would just get to the top of that social mountain, we would find peace. And ours is the generation that is waking up to the fact, through technology and through all the advancements we've made, we have, like I've mentioned earlier, we have access to more things, more prosperity, more entertainment, more comfort than any other generation in the history of the world. And we are not happy. Why? I believe we are not happy because we have forgotten the soul. And so as far as what's coming down the pipe for me and what I'm excited about, I'm just excited, and I'm so privileged, Omobola, that you had me on your show to talk to people about this and to try to spread this awareness. And I do it with no personal ambitions, no desire to manipulate people, but simply to share what I believe. And I believe that through understanding these 5 cravings, like I said, it is a crash course in understanding humanity. Because the interesting thing is when I realized, Omobola, that everything that I'm motivated by is centered around security, identity, independence, significance, and innocence. I also realize that that's your motivation, and that's the motivation of your listeners. And not only does that help me personally find satisfaction, but it helps me understand you. It helps me relate to you. It helps me understand the people around me. It gives us a sense of unity and grace and tolerance that perhaps we didn't have before, when we no longer divide ourselves by all these biological factors, right? What degree do you have? What school did you go to? What's your ethnicity? What's your background? When we realize that all of those things, they can be good things. They can be things we take pride in, but ultimately they have a high potential to divide us. But when we realize that what really, really defines us is the soul, and that all of our souls have the same framework and the same shape to them, that is a unifying understanding.
Right. Quickly, do you like to share any parting word for the audience?
Just to realize that you are not just an animal. I can't stress this enough. You exist beyond biology, and I encourage you to go out and explore your non-biological selves. And I have a journey that I'm on, and in my book, I communicate to people my opinion and my belief on certain things. Ultimately, you are going to go on your own journey, but I really encourage people to make sure that journey is not just a biological one, but it is a non-biological one. When you understand that more than a body, you are a soul, you can be content in situations that you never thought you could be content before. You can be content and happy in a small house. You don't have to have a big one. You can be content and happy driving a 2013 Nissan. You don't have to have the 2024. When you realize that we exist beyond these things, but it is a massive shift in our reasoning and in our thinking to finally awaken. I'm not just a brain. I'm not just a body. I exist beyond biology, and I need to start feeding that awareness.
Great having you on the show, Cory Rosenke, for sharing your thoughts on today's show to the audience of Live, especially focused on the importance of our soul rather than our biological body. I wish you best of luck in all the projects that you embark upon, especially your book.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much once again. Now, if you'd like to catch up with any missed episodes of Live with Omobola Stephen, you can do so on any cost promotion platforms or distribution platforms you bump into online, and I guarantee you're going to have an amazing time. Listen to experts and professionals share disruptive mindship conversations on topics or subjects under personal development and self-improvement, covering spirituality, business and career, and all the topics under such. Now, I need you to stay safe. I talk to you soon. Bye for now.